Afghanistan goes on as planned, even after the events of September 11th, appropriately renamed United Rerun. I'm Gretchen Carlson in New York City with that story coming up.
Plus, the candidates for Hartford mayor do some stumping for votes this weekend. And the world's most popular boy wizard makes his debut on the big screen. The Night Beat starts right now.
Now, Eyewitness News Night Beat.
A very busy day in New York City as patriotism was literally off and running in the New York City Marathon. The security was tight. Runners were told not to accept any cups of water from the sidelines this year. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tasha Jamerson. Well, tonight, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld says there are definite signs that the military strikes are having an effect on the Taliban. Rumsfeld says the Taliban are not really functioning as a government. The military officials also report that more U.S. ground forces have moved into Afghanistan to help air forces do a better job of hitting Taliban targets. Meanwhile, in the United States, the New York City Marathon did take place with organizers collecting donations in hopes of raising $1 million. CBS correspondent Gretchen Carlson is in New York City with the latest.
New Yorkers had two reasons to cheer tonight. First of all, a record number of spectators turned out for the New York City Marathon earlier today. And the Yankees were playing for their 4th World Series championship in a row.
Back at the wall, the Yankees have tied it again.
A Game 7 Yankees win would give fans one more reason to love New York. In these tense times, a World Series victory is just what the city needs. As a sign life must go on, the New York City Marathon went on as scheduled too. More than 30,000 runners from across the world participated in the race, appropriately renamed United Rerun. There were reminders of September 11th all around, from unprecedented security to a changed view of Lower Manhattan. 10 people ran in place of relatives who were killed in the terrorist attack. Others dedicated every step to the victims.
You see so many people running with flags, and you know, it's warming. It's heartfelt.
It renewed my spirit. I was really down. I was afraid to fly.
But fear still dwells in Manhattan as more traces of anthrax are found at City Hall, this time on a package from NBC News.
Nobody has shown symptoms. This should all probably work itself out pretty easily.
In Afghanistan, B-52 bombers launched the biggest single airstrike yet on Sunday, dropping more than 100 bombs on the Taliban front line.
We are aggressively attempting to find and root out terrorist networks.
But the secretary says to do that, it will take help from dozens of countries across the globe. The United States is also strengthening its ground troops in Afghanistan. The U.S. military now confirms they have sent in more special forces to try and take out the Taliban. In New York City, Gretchen Carlson, back to you.
Well, in Pakistan, pro-Taliban protesters took to the streets again today, calling for an end to the attacks in Afghanistan and rallying against Pakistan's involvement in it. The protest comes just hours after Osama bin Laden released another videotaped statement. Meanwhile, the president and foreign minister of Pakistan met with U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld today, discussing the continuous strikes across the border and the steps that are being taken to avoid civilian deaths.
Never in history has so much care been taken as at present by the United States to reduce civilian casualties to the minimum possible. And I think this statement is extremely valuable in view of the news that we see every day alleging increasing civilian casualties in Afghanistan.
They also discussed Pakistan's desire that the U.S. end the airstrikes before Ramadan. That's the Muslim holy month, which starts on November 17th. President Bush, though, has said that the bombings will continue. And Pakistani authorities have 2 men in custody for an anthrax threat last week at that country's most popular newspaper. They're suspected of putting powder in an envelope along with a news release and sending it to the paper. Dozens of employees are now taking antibiotics as a precaution, but Pakistan's president says no one has contracted anthrax. Connecticut Senator Christopher Dodd will discuss the recent anthrax attacks here in the Constitution State tomorrow. Dodd will speak to postal workers at the Hartford Post Office and students at Amity Regional High School in Woodbridge. And one of the local school systems affected by the recent anthrax scares will reopen tomorrow. Watertown schools were closed on Friday when officials learned that a Midwestern postal facility that may have provided them with envelopes tested positive for anthrax. Now, it turns out that the schools were not affected, and again, they will be open again tomorrow morning. Well, in Brantford, public school officials there are reviewing their emergency response plans, concerned about terrorism and their close proximity to the Millstone nuclear power plant complex. Montville school officials will meet tomorrow to discuss what they would do if Millstone was attacked or was the scene of an accident. Well, the CIA is increasing recruiting efforts in Connecticut, holding a drive at Yale University last week. A CIA spokesperson tells the New Haven Register they've been receiving 500 to 600 resumes a day since September 11th. Now, before the attacks, they received about 500 to 600 resumes a week. The CIA says that they are concentrating on Ivy League schools to find people skilled in engineering, computers, and languages. Well, today, workers in New York City removed another body from the World Trade Center rubble. But for most of the thousands of families affected by the September 11th attacks, there is the growing likelihood that their loved ones' bodies may never be recovered. And this makes for a difficult and unusual situation. How do mourning rites change when there is no body to bury?
Janine Belanger spends a lot of time in her backyard garden outside Worcester, Massachusetts. She created it in memory of her daughter. It's called Nicole's Peace.
Well, you know, Nicole loved flowers, and she loved places that were peaceful.
But Nicole's death was anything but peaceful. She was one of 259 people on board Pan Am Flight 103 when it exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland in 1988. The cause, a terrorist bomb. Janine's grief was compounded by the fact that Nicole's body was never recovered.
Well, at first I felt re-victimized again, that there was no place to bring this lovely child home where she could be remembered.
There was a memorial service for Nicole, but no funeral and no burial rites. And that will be the case for many victims of the September 11th attacks. Ted Suarez, a Roman Catholic, lost his son David in the World Trade Towers.
In the traditional events, you have closure by having a body that you see and that eventually you may want to visit.
Janine Belanger didn't need evidence of Nicole's death. What she needed were rituals to remember her. Every day at 3 o'clock, she drinks tea from a tea service made in Lockerbie, Scotland. She says her cup of tea is her sense of communicating with Nicole every day.
I really think that the challenge is to feel the spirit of the person that you have lost. It's not the physicality of remains that do that. It's the memories of that very special person.
Well, Janine and Ted say that their children's deaths remind them of how sacred life is. Well, in Manhattan, a church reopened today thanks to a lot of faith. The Trinity Church, which is 3 blocks from Ground Zero, was declared part of a post-disaster frozen zone. Today, parishioners returned to the church for services for the first time since the September 11th attacks. The church's 400 seats were all full today. Well, one of the most anticipated movies of the year had a magical debut today, attended by wizards and muggles of all ages. Harry Potter and the whole gang were all there at the world premiere of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in London. Celebrities from Sting to Cher to Sarah Ferguson all attended that premiere. Actor Robbie Coltrane, who plays Hagrid in the movie, talked about what Harry Potter fans can expect from the movie screen.
There's very little difference. The difference in the book and the film really is that the film is obliged to realize visually the things you would imagine when you were reading the book. But I mean, I spoke to Jo Rollins yesterday and she said the Quidditch game is more exciting than the one she imagines. So
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is scheduled to open in the United States on November 16th. And I cannot wait for that. Well, there's still much more ahead on the Night Beat, including the latest on the investigation into a fire that killed 4 children in Norwich.
Things are really heating up in Hartford as voters get ready to go to the polls and elect a new mayor. Tonight, find out what the candidates think and what's important to people who live in this city.
All aboard a very familiar train. I'm Andrew Bergam. I'll take you along with Thomas.
As I take a look outside right now, I see the rain coming down. I'll show you the latest on Doppler 3000 coming up in a few minutes.
You got some pretty good eyes there, Brian. This is Eyewitness News Night Beat. We are covering Haddam, Winstead, New Haven, and of course, you're part of Connecticut as well. We'll be right back.
Monday morning on Eyewitness News starting at 5.
How big an issue is smoking in your life? Starting next week on Channel 3 Eyewitness News, a 5-part series on how you can possibly kick the habit. Join us.
Plus, despite a slump in travel, one industry is still attracting business. See what it is and how you can cash in on all the deals. Wake up with Channel 3 for continuing coverage of America on Guard, time-saver traffic, and your weather on the 3s.
Monday morning on Eyewitness News starting at 5, Connecticut's news station.
This year is a special time to visit New Jersey. We're celebrating the 225th anniversary of the American Revolution, and we're honoring yesterday's heroes and those who fight for liberty today.
People always fall for New Jersey, whether it's picking pumpkins
or golfing.
Don't forget Atlantic City.
How about a little fishing?
Of course, there's always shopping.
Of course. This fall, see for yourself, New Jersey and you.
Perfect together.
For your free vacation kit, call 1-800-VISIT-NJ.
Well, the network's down. Bagel. And bagels. Blow for bagels.
Hey guys, can I come?
We're getting bagels.
Okay.
Network's down. You a bagel?
Need a reliable network that keeps everything working? SBC SNET. We're on it.
Is there a problem?
Yeah, you whacked me pretty hard there.
Whack? No, I might have tapped at parking, but I didn't whack it.
Yeah, you slammed into me there.
Slam.
Yeah, slam. Look at this.
It's fine.
That's misaligned. You can't replace that. We'll have to get that in Europe someplace.
Okay,
I'm glad. Oh, look who's here. I'm glad you're here to see this. I can't drive this home, and my wife's upstairs giving blood. I don't know if I mentioned that.
The Passat wagon. It only looks like $1 million.
Oh, I'm not an internist, but I think I got some bleeding going on here.
You're watching Channel 3 Eyewitness News with Tasha Jamerson, Brian Van Aken, and Eric Flemings. This is Connecticut's news station.
Norwich police say the deaths of 4 children killed in last night's house fire was accidental. That fire started just before 6:30 on Saturday night. The children, ages 5 to 13, all died of smoke inhalation. Authorities say the mother of 3 of the children was shopping when that fire started, and her 14-year-old son was visiting neighbors next door.
They were very popular kids. They were really good kids. They have friends everywhere. So now we're going to have to prepare for this on Monday and deal with this with the rest of the students.
Officials believe the fire may have been started by a candle that was left burning unattended. Bridgeport Mayor Joseph Ganem's life insurance policy is under question today. The Connecticut Post is reporting that Ganem kept the $1 million policy for nearly a year after he said it was canceled. Now, Ganem was arrested last week on 24 federal charges, including racketeering, extortion, and bribery. A part of the indictment against him shows that the Hartford Life Insurance Company mailed a quarterly policy report to Ganem's home in March of the year 2000. But Ganem showed the Post a letter dated June of 1999 in which he tells the company to drop that policy. Mayor Ganem did not comment on the incident. Well, firefighters in Waterbury are getting ready to vote on a contract that could save the city $5 million a year. That vote will be taking place tomorrow. The state board that controls the Brass City's money wants to save on all employee contracts. The board is expected to vote on whatever the firefighters decide on Tuesday. Well, speaking of Tuesday, in just 2 days, Connecticut's capital city will have a new mayor. Voters, of course, go to the polls on Tuesday. Channel 3 Susan Raff spoke with the candidates and voters tonight, and she joins us now with that story.
Tasha, Connecticut's capital city has some pretty big problems. High crime is just one of them. High taxes is another, and the school system that just needs improvement. The 2 candidates running for mayor feel they're right for the job. The question is, do voters believe them?
Hi. I'm Eddie Perez. I'm running for mayor.
What's the hardest part about the campaign?
I'm waiting for 8 o'clock on Tuesday. No, I've been doing this since June. I don't think there's any hard part. It is you have to work at it real diligently.
Eddie Perez has met a lot of people going door to door.
For example, I assumed that this was an absentee ballot, so I want to make sure that she did get it.
It's Perez's first time running for political office, yet he's pretty well known in the city because he's worked with several neighborhood groups. As for voters, they may not want politics as usual. Many want change. After a young girl was shot in the face during the summer, the concerns about violence in the city erupted.
Right now, on the street, we need to fight crime because of a lot of crime right now.
Hello, it's Bob Ludgen, running for mayor.
Bob Ludgen also wants to be Hartford's mayor. He's been a city councilor and a deputy mayor.
You're pretty grassroots. You're all by yourself with your shopping bag, and this is how it goes, isn't it?
Been doing this for 3 months. Plus, I've got lots of people doing that for me.
As a petitioning candidate, he says he's had to work a little harder.
Take one of these home to your parents.
This squirrel may not be too interested in who wins this election. Voters hope whoever does, there will be less talk.
You already endorsed Mr. Perez.
And more action.
We need a clean city. And the kids, you know, have them somewhere in the evening they can go and have something to learn, and that they can be better kids than what they are, more than drugs and all those kind of stuff.
Both candidates tell us they'll be out tomorrow all day and all night trying to convince as many voters as possible. And of course, both of the candidates are very concerned about voter turnout because this is not a gubernatorial election. There is some concern that many voters may avoid the polls and not go out, but obviously we won't know until Tuesday.
And forget all the little last-minute things that they have to do as the time goes down.
Yeah, they spend about 2 or 3 hours, they say, a day, and they say most people are very polite and friendly, but they do get a few doors slammed in their faces.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Channel 3 Susan Rath. Thanks, Susan.
You're welcome.
And of course, we are your election station. Watch Channel 3 for complete live election night coverage on Tuesday. We will bring you the returns the moment they come into our newsroom. Well, there was a lot of hootin' and tootin' in Essex this weekend. The town flooded with fans of the show Thomas the Tank Engine. Susan didn't get there, though. No matter what the age, folks came from all over to catch a glimpse of the train in person. And Channel 3's Andrew Pergam tells us it was worth the trip.
Children of all ages are excited to see trains, especially when it's Thomas the Tank Engine.
When you're about 2 years old, there are few things neater than seeing Thomas, the star of many a kid's TV set.
He's a very good engine. He always helps out sometimes.
But looking the other way, this is the view that most kids rarely see. Thomas weighs in at 55 tons, with burning coal in his belly, all shoveled by hand. He does 0 to 60 in about a minute and a half. No power steering, but he's got a bit of history attached.
It was a small switch engine that ran on the docks down in Brooklyn, New York.
Now, instead of just pulling, he's also turning heads, 30,000 of them this weekend and next in Essex. Among those faces are a lot from out of town, even some not too old to show their pride in Thomas.
This is Percy. This is Percy, yeah.
Forgive me, I'm sorry.
My son's favorite.
But for some, their kids are just an excuse.
Oh, he's a Thomas fan. I'm just a train fan.
Regular Amtrak wouldn't do?
No, I don't think so. He likes Percy and Gordon and Diesel 10.
If you don't know anything about Thomas, you'd be a bit out of place here. For one thing, you wouldn't know that regular coal won't cut it.
It is officially called magic coal. That's what makes Lady go.
Of course, some couldn't just leave empty-handed.
My son saw everything. He wanted everything. I said, oh, hey.
Probably their pocketbooks are a little lighter, but I would think that they all look pretty happy, too. Their kids are enjoying the day.
And some of them are, too.
They went last year without me.
Okay, so this is payback.
That's payback.
All right. Thomas the Tank Engine fans will rest assured knowing that he'll be back on track for next weekend. In Essex, Andrew Pergam, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Well, in Los Angeles, the third time proved to be the charm for the Emmy Awards after being canceled twice after the September 11th attacks and airstrikes in Afghanistan. The show did go on tonight right here on Channel 3, but this year's ceremony had a much different look. Manuel Gallegos takes us to the red carpet.
Welcome to the 53rd, 54th, and 55th Emmy Awards.
After the Emmy Awards were postponed twice as a result of the terrorist attacks, the show went on, with host Ellen DeGeneres breaking the ice.
I mean, I feel like I'm in a unique position as host, because think about it. What would bug the Taliban more than seeing a gay woman in a suit surrounded by Jews?
To the TV audience, the ceremony looked the same, but in reality, it was in a much smaller theater with much more security. And there was a serious thread throughout, like the tribute to David Angel, one of the creators of the show Frasier. He and his wife were killed in the World Trade Center attack.
He was an incredibly talented, incredibly kind person.
And remarks from Emmy organizers.
Let history remember that the 53rd Annual Emmy Awards stood up to fear, we stood up to hate, and we celebrated the American spirit.
And the Emmy goes to...
There were, of course, winners like Allison Janney and Bradley Whitford for supporting roles in The West Wing, Doris Roberts and Peter McNichol for Best Supporting Comedy roles, for Best Comedy Actor Eric McCormick and Comedy Actress Patricia Heaton.
Men and women that are in the armed forces right now, and their families who have let them go, to thanks for going out there and making this country a place where we can sit here and do this.
And while many stars from New York did attend, there were several winners who didn't show for whatever reason. Manuel Gallegos, CBS News, Hollywood.
Makes the interception, and he's nothing but end zone for the win, 27-21. Bears with a victory. Today's big NASCAR race, the Pop Secret 400, won by Joe Nemechek, only a second checkered flag in his Winston Cup career. He finished over 6 seconds ahead of second placer Kenny Wallace. Connecticut's Jerry Nadeau had one of his better races of the year, finishing 5th overall. Well, these people didn't have the advantage of race cars, had to win their race on foot, the New York Marathon. It weaves its way through all 5 boroughs and is as much a part of New York as a $5 Rolex. So it's running, one of the many events helping New York heal. In fact, the race, titled United We Run, was dedicated to victims of the September 11th attack. The men's winner, Tesfaye Jafar, in 2 hours, 7 minutes, and 43 seconds. That's a men's record. The women's winner, Margaret Okeyo from Kenya, 2 hours, 24 minutes, and 21 seconds. A women's record. So ideal conditions in New York. That'll do it from sports. I'm Noah Finn. Stick around. We'll be right back with more news.